Hello and welcome back to the Cariboo Valley and City Skylines 2. In this video we'll be looking at a build I made for Sully's first community challenge. Next, I'll explain the inspiration and process to create this build, and at the end I'll list the mods that I used. CS2 is turning 1 year old this week, so let's have a look at what it can do. Participating in Sully's challenge gave entrants early access to new decals, surfaces, and assembly assets created by Sully. These are the field decals. You can see 6 variations of baseball fields with different surface types and shapes. And these are the manufactured grass surfaces and decals. Note that when using the surfaces, the direction of the pattern depends on the first line you draw, so you can align it as you see fit. These are the optional assemblies. There are several fences of different heights and colors, as well as this dugout and batting cage. When they are available on the PDX Mods store, I'll pin a link in the comments. I was excited to see Sully's new assets and was not initially planning on entering the competition since I'm also working on a map for Moose's upcoming Detailers collab series. More on that another time. I was also not intending to start a build series, but I'm really enjoying playing and detailing on this map, so I'm open to doing more projects here in the future. Obviously, this is not a typical build series where I start at the beginning of a new town, but I will instead focus on this detail build. It's also not quite a one-to-one build, but is heavily influenced by the real West Fraser Timber Park and surrounding area in Quesnel, BC. As you can see here, I already had a small starter downtown. I actually zoned out these areas to test out the Fraser River footbridge assets that Harbour Master J made to replicate the real bridge. This is the longest wood truss footbridge in the world. In my last video where I explained the features of this map, I showed how I put it together and made it functional. If you're interested in that video or getting the map, there will be links in the description. I decided to continue on this save file when I saw Sully's assets and realized there is a really interesting baseball complex in Quesnel. This is the West Fraser Timber Park. I took some screenshots to enhance my image overlay for the park and got to work on the frame of the park. I also decided to build out some of the surrounding area so the build didn't look like it was isolated when I zoomed out. This included the nearby residential neighborhood, industrial and institutional areas, the roundabout, and Johnston Bridge, as well as an RV park and campground across the river. I'll briefly note that the only part that really matters for the competition is the park. Everything surrounding that is really just extra for me so that the park has some context. I used the Road Builder mod to make the roads as close to real life as possible. For example, Johnston Ave only has a sidewalk on one side. I removed the crossings where they don't exist and put in the power lines. I also tried to zone the buildings to the correct roads, so I removed zoning from the rear lanes. Once the area zoned in, I planted lots of trees, which is not actually entirely representative of the real neighborhood, but I really like the way it looks. Moving on to the industrial and institutional area, we can see some larger buildings, gravel lots, and storage areas. These areas may not appear glamorous, but I actually really enjoy detailing them as they add so much realism to small town builds. You can see I've used decals on the custom roads to make them look more rural and worn out with edges that blend nicely. And later I used a lot of decals to add a little graffiti to some of the buildings. This roundabout next to the park connects the 2 areas we just looked at with the Johnston Street Bridge. The roundabout was made with custom roads, and I continue using decals for detail. Then I put the power line right through the middle, just like it is in the real world. I think it adds a nice detail. The Johnston Street Bridge is really awesome. Well, awesome is subjective. Let's say it's unique. The real bridge has a narrow grate surface and single concrete sidewalk on one side. You don't want to drop anything important out the window of your car on this one. There's even a shelter underneath this side of the bridge to protect pedestrians that are walking on the path below from any debris falling through the bridge deck. I used an industrial fence to try and recreate this. Let's imagine it's fixed to the bottom of the bridge. I was able to recreate the bridge again with the help of Harbour Master J. Because it's over a custom road with the same dimensions, I don't need to add any invisible lanes. Continuing over to the north side of the bridge, we get to this RV park and campground. It's fairly simple with gravel roads branching off a main road, then simply detailed with campers, bathrooms, and a garbage area. Back across the river, we finally get to the focus of this build, the West Fraser Timber Park. The real park features 5 baseball fields, some tennis, pickleball, and volleyball courts, a lawn bowling club, which I believe is currently closed, a playground, community garden, pond, large grass field, and gravel parking. Oh, and this old train car, which is a Heritage Lumber train car. Keep in mind, this isn't the exact layout of the park since the baseball field assets were a bit bigger than some of the real fields, so I had to shift some things around to make it work. First, I put in the paths and field decals as placeholders. I could have detailed the fields first, but instead I worked on some of the other features of the park. I used Sully's tennis court decals over the vanilla courts and placed these pickleball courts by the Broman 10 and Harbor Master J. To make the volleyball court, I placed Jay's pickleball net on a small surface area of sand. This pond was created using one of the reflective water surfaces by G87. The lawn bowling club was made using Sully's manicured grass, a fence net lane, some benches, and this small commercial building which I detailed with some tables and chairs. I then placed City Rats letters on it to look like it was rebranded by some millennials. I can almost guarantee this place serves locally roasted coffee and craft beer. For the parking lots, I used domes parking spaces with decals to hide them. I wasn't sure how many Sims would actually visit the park, so I left some blank spaces between the parking assets and plopped some prop vehicles. Then it was time for the fields. I found the best way to make the fields was to place the desired decal in a flat open space, then draw a pedestrian path around it that would be a guide for my fences. Then I placed the fences using the straight and then curved line tool. Sometimes the fence assets vanish, but you just need to jiggle them with Move It to get them to reappear. This happens with some other assets too. I then put in the dugouts, which were aligned with the fences, and removed fences for openings to the field. At this point, you can use the manicured grass surfaces to make the field look the way you want it to be. After doing this once, I was able to save the assembly using the Control-C mod by JK142 and paste it. This was super helpful and saved me a lot of time. I detailed the big fields with these stands by Harbor Master J and some big commercial lights. The playground was assembled using 2 playground assets, a ground surface, and this assembly made by Sunny Scunny for his Sunny Isle build. I used the logs to make the playground border, middle walkway, and these arch structures inspired by the real playground. Similar to before, I made one of these, then used Control-C to place another one here, and another one by the main entrance of the park. I was able to make these desire paths using this decal, which I believe is part of Statik Noize's Real Vision pack. FYI, if you're looking for that pack, it's not available on PDX mods, so I'll leave a link in the description to a video where Moose explains how to get it. The large grass field is pretty simple with Sully's manicured grass surface and some decals to blend it around the edges into the forest. When looking at some of the photos of the park on Google Maps, I found that there's an old train car on display in the park. So I laid down a short segment of track and plopped down this train car and made it red using the Recolor mod by Yin Yang. Then I did some detailing around it with bushes and flowers. One of the last things I did was add the community garden. It's not a replica of the real one since I didn't have a lot of reference images. So I just made it up. It's also not in the same location, but I placed it here to fill up some of the extra space between the lawn bowling club and parking lot. I used Sully's manicured grass surface with this circular pattern and did some simple detailing. Lastly, I added a couple of extra things for fun. I used the Hillside Hollywood letters by Harbour Master J that were created for Sully's LA build series. Up on the hill here, I spelled out Cariboo and placed them so that they can be seen when crossing the bridges or at the baseball field. Then I decided I would try and make my own decal for a fictional sports team. I called them the Lumberjacks because the city of Quesnel's main industry is forestry and the park is named after West Fraser Timber, one of the biggest manufactured lumber companies in the world, which was founded in this city. The team logo is an AI-generated image that I turned into a decal, imported into the game, and placed on one of Jay's blank billboards. I'm pretty happy with how this turned out, and I'm pretty stoked to add decal making to my tool belt. I'm really glad I did this build. It was nice to switch it up and try something other than map making for a bit. I'm actually really impressed with what we can do in CS2 1 year after launch. I know it's still not where a lot of people wanted it to be, and what I've done here wouldn't be possible without modders, but it also wouldn't be possible without the base game being moddable in this way. It will only get better, so here's to a bright future for CS2. Before I wrap up, I want to thank a few people. Sully for hosting the community challenge and inspiring me with the assets, Harbour Master J for assets and help with troubleshooting, and Moose HXC for basically teaching me how to detail in this game. City Planner Plays for some of the cool tunes that you're hearing in this video, and also a big thank you to all the modders and asset creators. As mentioned at the beginning, I'm going to finish off by listing all the mods I used in this build. And lastly, thank you for watching. Happy building and take care.